Life's too short to spend it obsessing over food and weight. That's why we're all about living life without diets. All right, Lisa, today we're going to talk about getting weird.
Let's
I
do
love being
it.
weird.
I love being weird. I like you take it as a compliment.
Yeah, in my house, like we call each other weird. Like I'll call my daughter, like, Adeline, you're so weird. Like, oh, thanks, Mom.
I'm gonna
So
start doing that. I love
yeah,
that.
weird is a good thing. And unfortunately, in our culture, dieting is the norm. It's the norm, not the exception. So we want to be weird. We're going against the norm of diet culture. And we're going to get weird today and talk about why dieting is not cool. And it's really not a natural thing to humans. So we want to get back to our natural selves, which by today's standards is kind of weird.
Yeah, let's be weirdos.
All right. So, I mean, I think just in general, dieting goes against our natural intuition.
200%.
I like to use the example with my clients of a baby. So think of when you have a baby, right? They get hungry, they cry, you feed them. When they get full, they just stop eating. They're just listening to their hunger cues, and there's no emotion tied into it. They may use a little bit of comfort if they're teething, which is normal, but it's all a very natural process for them. But as we grow up, we get taught to be unintuitive, and we learn unintuitive behaviors. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the most unintuitive things you see from your clients?
Goodness. Well, just to touch on that, I too always remind people that we are born intuitive eaters. It is our natural tendency. You see babies like, oh, and they go like that, and they don't want it, or
Oh,
they
one thing more of that? Yeah.
yeah. You see them, it's really cute. And people get frustrated, but that's like our bodies speaking to us. Our bodies know what they want. So what are some of the most unintuitive? By the way, I've never used that word, unintuitive.
Yeah.
Do you use that?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. I'm learning. I'm gonna pick up on a lot of little things today that I'm gonna steal from you. Um, but the one that comes up a lot is going to the bathroom. I guess you could say peeing. Number
Yeah.
two, any of it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
I don't want to be like gross, but like, I mean, we all do it.
Oh, are you kidding me? Dietitians talk about all the gross stuff all the time. That's how we
That's
do
for
it.
sure. And in a lot of the previous places where I worked, we did talk a lot about poop health. I don't know what they
Yeah.
called it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we won't get into that today. But it's just wild when you think about like all of the demands and all the beliefs that they throw at us, this messaging about dieting and how you should eat and blah 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 blah. And if you connected that, if you use that same language with some of these natural tendencies our bodies have, like holding our breath is another one, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
going to pee, right?
Yeah.
Like it would be insanity, right? We
Right.
would be like, what is going on here? This is crazy talk. I shouldn't use that word, but this is just like ludicrous.
Yeah. Our body regulates hunger and appetite naturally. Like it's not something we have to think about. Like, oh, it's time to be hungry. I better, it's time to be hungry. Like it's not a conscious thing where we're telling our body to be hungry. Our body does it naturally, just like we don't think about taking a breath, or we don't think about it's time to pee. Like our body just says, oh, your bladder's full. There's an urge. You better go pee.
Yeah.
So think of how crazy it would be if we were to try to regulate our other natural processes like breathing and peeing, like we do our food intake. Like how that would mess up our body, which is exactly what we're doing when we try to regulate our hunger and appetite unnaturally or unintuitively. Um,
Let's go there a second. Let's play with it, right? So like one of the cringiest like diet slogans is to me is you are what you eat. Like what
yeah,
does that mean? Right? Like just imagine it's like you are what you pee. Like what is
right.
that?
You are the frequency of your urination. Like you are the size of your bladder.
As somebody with kidney stones, that would be especially interesting. Like, oh, well, what does this mean about me?
Right. I mean, it's crazy. like just thinking in terms of replacing diet slogans, think about like counting your breaths. Like we have to count calories and macros and all of this when we diet, but like, well, what if somebody was like, well, you can only breathe, 2,700, I have no idea how many times we breathe a day, but like if we put a limit on it, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I took too many breaths that hour. I better cut back and breathe slower the next hour. Like that's essentially what we're telling ourselves when we're trying to diet. So I'm really big on telling my clients, like, in the moment, don't think about what you ate earlier or yesterday, and don't think about what you're going to eat later that day or tomorrow. Just think in the moment, like, what do I need right now? And that's exactly what we do when we're breathing. It's like, we don't even think about it. Our body knows how much it needs to breathe, and it naturally regulates it, just like it will naturally regulate our hunger.
You know what's interesting? I just noticed, even you just saying that, like making a joke about it, I like felt it in my chest, like, do I breathe? Like, right? Like with the diet stuff, like when you're told or when you start to believe this, like, oh, I can't have this, all of a sudden your body goes into this like deprivation mode, right? I felt myself holding my breath, like, okay,
yeah.
can I breathe
normally? I
normally?
do the same thing. It's crazy. We just like, I mean, even if you think of, like I use this example a lot with my clients, like, hold your breath for, I don't know how long people can hold their breath, like a minute probably is typical, or maybe less than a minute. I don't know. But like, hold your breath. Like as you get closer to running out of oxygen in your lungs, the only thing you can think about is when you get to breathe again. Right? Like, when do I get to take that breath? Especially if you put like a number on it, like you have to hold it for 60 seconds and you're looking at the timer and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then it's, right, you take a huge gasp breath. Like that's
giving me anxiety.
I know, it's making me like feel short of breath too, just thinking about it.
Let me breathe normally.
But that's essentially what happens when we try to control our food intake. The body just like gasps for food once we finally get to eat. And that's just not normal. Like, or that, that's not how our body is supposed to be regulated. So we want to get back to that natural state of how our body self-regulates.
Totally. My mind is going to all sorts of places with this. And I'm just thinking about like how I personally get when I have to pee and I can't. And that's like, right. That's all you can think about. I'm like, I just, you probably don't want to be around me at that point. Right. And there's not any part of me that starts to, like, I don't care what other people think. I'm not believing anything it's like, I have to pee. But yet with food, it comes with this whole complex thing of like, well, I'm hungry. What are other people going to think? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not at that place now, right? But I've been at that place. Stages like, if I eat this and if that, and like, just so much unnecessary thinking that goes behind it that like we don't even think twice about when we have to go to the bathroom. It's like, get out of my way.
Right.
I'm going. Move
Right.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much story that we've created behind food that causes us to second guess our food choices. It's interesting. Like a lot of times clients come to me and they're like, oh, I just, I need to consult with a professional because I'm, so confused with all the diet messages out there. And I just want to know for sure so that I don't have to second guess all my choices. And it's like, not second guessing your choices has nothing to do with the information or knowledge you have about nutrition. Even if I educate you differently or tell you what things to throw away, like you'll still second guess because you've been taught to second guess all of your food choices. So we've got to undo that. And that's what's going to actually help you stop overthinking every food choice.
Gosh,
yeah,
it would be so amazing to work with you. I would like love to meet with you. I feel like you're so good at what you do.
Oh, same. I mean, I wouldn't be here with you if I didn't think the same.
Yeah. Oh, little touching moment.
Yeah.
So dieting is not normal, right?
Right. And if we think about, where dieting came from or how it started, and I will be totally honest, I don't 100% have the whole story. I can only obviously go back so far in my lifetime and what I've read. I think it goes even deeper. In fact, there are some people I'd love to interview that know a lot more about this topic than I do, that hopefully we'll get them on at some point. But what limited knowledge I have about the history of dieting, one is that it's really centered around the idea that the most difficult body type to achieve is typically the body type that people want. So like at some point in history, larger bodies were viewed as a sign of status and wealth because not everybody could afford to eat, nutrient, heavy proteins. And I was actually watching a TV show the other day, and it was, they had this character that came from the past, and he was like explaining how rich he was. And he was like, they're like, well, how rich were you? And he's like, I ate animal protein 3 times a week, because in his day, that was
loaded.
It's a big deal, right? To be able to do that. And so it, as society shifted and, capitalism came in and now there was something to sell, and, foods that are generally more in their natural state and less processed because they have a shorter shelf life, tend to be more expensive. And so now this way of eating becomes the in thing, the fresh this and the fresh that and everything, because that's the harder thing to achieve and to acquire. And then, companies come in and they sell something. But I mean, if you think about how long the diet industry has been around, I mean, just even watching movies like, I would imagine it was like back in the maybe 30s or 40s where they had the little machines that like shake you, or like it was like the little diet pills someone was selling out of the trunk of their car. Or I mean, it's like there's just been this pervasive message of like you can buy this, sense of whatever is desired from a bottle or from this or from whatever, and we've just bought into it, and then it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. The industry has gotten huge. And I think it's important to like step back and just say like, who's actually benefiting from this?
Super.
If I buy into this. And it's been masked with this concept of health that now it's hard for people to even differentiate, because they go, oh, well, but it is good for me. It's healthier for me, this or that. And that's just not always the case, because those two have been, the diet industry has kind of been overpowered now by the health and wellness industry, that they're so clouded and intertwined and messy.
I almost wish like this would be a fun idea for somebody to do, to like make almost like a telenovela, like some sort of dramatic series of like the history of dieting and who like, not about good or bad, but like, who like the bad guy was and like who took over what, because it really is kind of a dramatic history. And similar to you, I'm not saying you described it beautifully, but I have a hard time like recounting history. And I'm not going to try and be like, some pioneer in our field. Like there are some people that I've mentioned, like Christy Harrison, that does such a great job of like recounting the history of dieting.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure, well, to touch on a couple things. One being like, yeah, who benefits? And in that, I think it's really easy for people to like just say, oh, I know the diet industry is like billions of dollars and blah, blah, blah. Yes, but when we really learn about the history, there's so much more to it that what I've seen for people and for myself is when you really get into it, it's so messed up that you're like, oh, there's no way I'm supporting this, because it's capitalism, right? It's
racism.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Colonization. There's a lot of it is rooted in racism, and who benefits from it, right? Eurocentric or, different societies at different times. But it's usually like, it's not a good look when you look at it, right?
Not a good
Definitely not a good look for dieting. And the more you learn, the more it's like, it's just hard to.
Even like the dietitian profession, which, I'm a part of, is traditionally white women. When you look at the stats of who is a dietitian, there's an underserved Latin population, Black population within the dietitian community. And that has ended up resulting in a lot of the dietary recommendations that go into, like, we're talking all the way up to what, the FDA is recommending. It ends up being a lot of, foods that are more common in white culture than in other cultures. And so now other cultures end up getting left out of that equation, and it segregates them from being able to be even a part of that idea of health. because they're not seeing things that are normal to them. And there's often, nothing wrong with any of the foods that are a part of their diet. And yet they don't make it into that recommended.
I love to remind people about how rice and beans are so nourishing for our bodies, but yet, right, like what you were saying, marginalized communities and like all of the BS that has led us to this point, and we're praising these other foods when I'm like, let's just make some rice. It's cheap, it's easy, it's delicious, it's good for you.
Exactly. And like just on the idea of rice and beans, like that is a staple too in so many different cultural diets.
But it doesn't sell. It's cheap.
I know, but it's crazy. But it's so like it's like a staple in our house because, well, yeah, it's cheap. It's also easy to make, and everybody likes it. Like it's one of the few foods that we get burnt out on, and you can incorporate it in so many different ways that I can't imagine not feeling like I couldn't eat that.
I mean, that's my culture. That would be so sad.
I know, right?
Tell Cubans to not eat rice and beans. You're a goner.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, food, like, I think it's normal. I'm going to get away from that word of normal. We were talking about this before the show, like how hard it is to not say that word, because the reality is dieting has become normal. We're trying to get away from that normal, but maybe the word natural, like it's natural to explore different foods. It's natural to have meals with friends and family and not be sitting there thinking about worrying that you're going to overeat or the calories or that you're guilty. You need to feel guilty for it. And, it's natural to use our body to tell us how much to eat, what's going to taste good, what's going to be satisfying. And I love that word satisfying. I don't typically use the word filling. It's satisfying. Like food needs to be satisfying. Like, it's like you go eat the low calorie ice cream. Like, are you really going to be satisfied? Or would you be better off just eating the real thing? But that's really, to me, what is natural, not this, depriving ourselves of food that's going to satiate or satisfy us, or critiquing every inch of our body. I mean, even if we go back like 100 years, so the 20s, there was already some diet culture there. Not nearly as bad, obviously, as now, but we go back 200 years. I mean, were people whipping out tape measures and weighing themselves every day? I don't think so. And the more we engage in that type of behavior, the more we start overthinking every food choice, because we're trying to use numbers and calculations to make our decisions and not listen to our bodies. So the more we weigh and measure and count and calculate things, the farther we get away from what is natural for our bodies.
What's this accent that I heard you say? The way you say measure? I'm like, oh, there's like
I have no idea. What does it sound like? Is it like measure? So it's I'm going to take a sidebar right now. It's so funny you say that, because I have like a handful of words that people will like the same thing like you just did. They're like, oh, where's that accent from? And they're like all different. Like I have like probably 5 or 6 words, and they'll just like kind of point it out. And then once I become conscious of it, then I'm like, oh, God, I've like said that weird my whole life. And like, I don't know anybody that says it that way.
It's especially funny coming from a dietitian, and I feel like you should make like a fun story of like different accents you have, like make up.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Okay, but let me get back to the seriousness.
All the ways we can say things.
Yeah, I get easily distracted. I was like, ooh, no, in all seriousness. So to recount kind of what we're saying, dieting has become the norm, but it's not natural. Or say, and it's not natural, right? Because really, like, okay, now I'm not a doctor. I'm like putting on all these like little hats today, not a historian, not a doctor. However, I will say that there are a lot of physiological responses that our body has to feeling deprived, and they're not ideal ones, right? Like you were saying, we start to think about food more because that's our body saying, hey, I need it,
Yeah.
right? Like things in our body start to slow down. It's not functioning optimally. That's not really what we're going for, right?
Right.
Like, so why we would do something or be encouraged to do something that is going to lead our body to not function optimally? What is that? Like, that's no,
Right.
not natural,
And,
not the goal, whatever you want to call it.
we know that like yo-yo dieting, so like losing and regaining and losing, regaining weight, that plays a toll on our metabolic health. And I don't mean like how many calories you burn a day. Like it does affect that too, but I mean metabolic
They're
health
trying to
in
go
the
for-
sense that it increases insulin resistance in your body, which doesn't make us feel good. When we have high levels of insulin, that can make us feel really tired. So we're creating a problem that wasn't there to begin with. It also taxes our thyroid, which, of course plays into metabolism. But I think, I try to get my clients away from thinking in terms of metabolism. And, how does a low functioning thyroid make somebody feel? Really shitty, right? Like when you have a slow thyroid, sure, your metabolism slows down, but the bigger issue is that you feel like crap. You have no energy, you feel sluggish, and you just feel, tired, and it causes other things like hair loss and, just sleep problems. So like, we don't want to do something that's going to start causing our body to not function in a way that helps us to feel good. Like a lot of times people come to me and they say, I'm tired of feeling crappy.
Yeah.
And they somehow think that continuing to work on improving their diet is going to fix all of this. And it's like, actually the thing we need to do is actually stop all of that and just get you stabilized to eating just normal foods, fueling your body so that it stops being in survival mode all the time. And, and then at this point, depending on how long these cycles have been going on, there may be some damage that's been done. Like they may need medication to stabilize their thyroid. They may need, if they've developed diabetes or pre-diabetes, like they may need, some medication assistance, because getting away from that, after after this problem has been created, without going down this path of like strict dieting, we have to kind of like weigh the pros and cons a little bit, because if we go down that path again, that they've been on so many times before, like, sure, they may do great for a short period of time, but then what? Now you're back to worse than where you started. So we don't,
dieting does damage.
right. So each time that cycle gets cranked through, we end up, doing a little more damage each time. And so, we have to at some point come to the realization that the solution is to stop doing that.
And that's when people look at us like we're a bunch of weirdos.
Right. Oh yeah. That's the make or break conversation where people are like, you're the dietitian for me, or I think that I'll give it some time and call you back later. Or I get well, I tell you what, I'm going to go and lose weight for the next 6 months. And then I'm going to come back to you and you can teach me all that stuff so I can maintain it. And I'm like, doesn't work that way. I'm like, if you do that, you're going to likely start gaining the weight back. And then you're going to go, intuitive eating doesn't work. Right? Like when I ate intuitively, I just lost control. No, you didn't lose control because of intuitive eating. You lost control because you just underate for 6 months straight. And your body's like taking that gasp of air because you've been holding your breath for so long. And it's like, food. It's not intuitive eating that fails.
No. It's just a setup. I know. That's where sometimes I lose people too. And it's hard. Like everything, you're not going to be the perfect person for everyone, or even just the person for them to help them work through this work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be weird. No, I'll wait for
Totally
fellow girls to come to me and like, let's do this work together.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because now that I've been in practice for about 10 years, I mean, I've been a dietitian for 18, but in private practice, I gotten to the point now where like 2-3 years after I first spoke to somebody, I will have clients call me back. Like, I think I'm finally starting to get what you were telling me before. Like, maybe I'm ready to do this differently. I think sometimes people just aren't ready always to hear the message. It's a lot to let go of dieting.
Yeah.
So, like, I will oftentimes tell clients, like, I'm not expecting you to like let go of it tomorrow. Like, you have to let go of it before we can work together. No, I'm here to help you let go of it. You just have to be willing to work towards letting go of it. That's all.
Or even just noticing. I think we had talked about in a previous episode how it could be lonely to be like that anti-diet person. That might be too big of a step for people, but even I'll usually ask people just to take note of like how it's really working for them, to practice real honesty with themselves, to meditate on it, pray on it, journal about it, whatever you have to do to really get just like a clear picture of where is this dieting leading me? How am I feeling in my body? Like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's working and what if it's not? And then I love to hear the part where it's not working so we could start to do the other stuff. But I let people sometimes, I mean, body autonomy for all. People can do what their body wants.
Yeah. And ultimately, people have to get to that decision on their own to be ready to work on it. But the big things that, for listeners, I think they can start doing now is, I think where you started was perfect. Just slowing down and start paying attention and asking yourself these questions and paying attention to like, how is this impacting me? And is it in a positive way? Most likely not. And even just slowing down and listening to your body, because it's possible that after years of dieting, somebody has kind of lost touch with even their regular hunger and fullness cues. And it may actually take time for those to come back. So the first realization may just be, I'm not sure that I even know what hunger and fullness feel like anymore. Unless it's to an extreme. Like a lot of people just know the two extremes, but they've missed out on how to feel that middle ground. And then getting in the habit of reminding yourself that all food's fit. That it's not like I can only have this so many times, or I'm gonna have this today, but I can't have it again for a while. Just really like focusing on right now what's going to satisfy me without thinking about the past or the future. Just right now, think in the moment. I think that's really the best first step. Just getting in the moment.
Like we said, no one's going to put a limit on how much we go to the bathroom or how many breaths we take in a day, or we're going to come after them, right? So like,
should be doing the same with people threatening our food.
Go after all of them.
We're going to go out. Well, we kind of are. We kind of do sometimes.
In a gentle way.
Yeah. Well, I would say you and I, yes, but there are people out there that are not as gentle about it, and they have every right to put diet culture on blast in whatever angry way they want to, in my opinion. So anyways, anything else you have to share today, Lisa?
Yeah, it's been fun.
Okay, I think we're going to go out and get weird, and we hope we've convinced everybody else to be the weirdo.
Get weird. Okay, take care.
Okay, weird. Okay, bye.